All right. Hi, teachers. This is Mrs. Story. I have a really great counseling session for the whole classroom talking about stress. And I want to share it with you just in case you want to incorporate it at your school. It doesn't take that long. You can do the whole thing maybe in about 45 minutes. So, and you can cater it to be a little bit shorter or a little bit longer. So whatever works best for you. So the goal of this counseling session is really to align with the American School Counselor Association Mindset and Behaviors, BSMS 7 and 8. And the goal of those two are to demonstrate effective coping skills when faced with a problem and to demonstrate the ability to balance school and home and your community. That is super important for us to be able to do with our students. And then I wanted to take it a step further and really align it to one of the ethical standards. And that one is A4D, and it's to provide opportunities for all students to develop mindsets and behaviors necessary to learn work-related skills, resilience, perseverance, understanding lifelong learning as a part of a long-term career success, a positive attitude towards their learning, and a strong work ethic. Sorry about that. And the overarching goal for this lesson is for students to be able to identify their emotions and feelings and how it affects them when they're stressed out. And then there's also some additional lessons that we can do to really talk about appropriate stress management techniques that they can utilize at home or at school. You can do other lessons talking about healthy versus unhealthy coping mechanisms, because we all have those, right? Maybe we eat too much, maybe you're working out too much, maybe you make some other really bad choices. So there's additional growth opportunities for lessons that you can do in the future. So I provided a pre and post test for this lesson. For the counseling specific, it is for students to be able to identify their emotions, their physical response, and cognitive response to stress. I think that's super important for our students, and it really just aligns with that ethical standard that I mentioned to you earlier. You can't have resilience or perseverance or anything like that in your life, that health, if we're not aware of our body. And I aligned it to a math content goal and then also a language arts goal. So for math, the objective of this lesson is to provide high school students data and information to help them make decisions on what are effective coping skills and to manage their stress. And this really is aligned with a really great math standard for our secondary students. And then for language arts specifically, the object of the small group lesson is to provide high school students the data and information to help them justify their own views and understanding and make new connections based off the evidence and reasoning provided during the session. I think it's really important for us to give students the skills to make their own choices, and that's really what this is going to do. It's a really good introductory lesson to stress. So I provide students with a little background knowledge on stress. I have an introduction that I give. We introduce ourselves. We go over confidentiality. We develop group norms. And it's a really great opportunity to share with each other and to set the tone for the lesson. And then I talk about the need of the lesson. And that's really just the data behind it. And that aligns with some of our pre and post test goals. So I share with them a survey from the American Psychological Association, and it was surveying teens. I talk about what teens are stressed about. The percentage of teens that are stressed was just alarming. And I know I was really surprised that the things that they were stressed about were very different than I thought. I thought it was going to be more surface level stress or stress of things that affect them personally. And it wasn't. It was things about their safety. it was the news, it was things that are going on in our nation. And I think those are things that we really need to be aware of all the potential stresses, and if there's anything that we can do to mitigate some of those stresses, if it's here at school or things at home, that we can help our students. The next thing that I do is I have the students complete a stress survey, and that's really for our purposes. I want students to be able to register what their stress is and start to think about it. And maybe they had those feelings or responses and they didn't even know that it was stress. But it's just really good data. One, to see if students are stressed, what the level of their stress is like, if there's some similarities that we can do. Here at school, maybe it's doing a yoga class during lunchtime. Maybe it's producing a really zen spot for students. Maybe it's, checking in with them. There's lots of things that we can do, but if we don't know what's stressing them out and how it looks for them, there's no way that we can help them. And we can share that moving forward, some of that stress. The next thing that we do is really getting the group lesson and discussion going between everybody. And I share a video, which is really talking about stress chemically, what that response looks like. Because I don't know if everybody really knows what causes stress and how it's your body's fight or flight response. And I think videos are always nice, especially for older kids, to have the use of technology versus me talking at them all the time. So that's why I provided the short video. And it's an opportunity for discussion, their thoughts on what they saw and if they've ever experienced those things. The next thing that we move to is I show them a diagram of the body and the different areas that stress can affect us. And it is so important to start to take stock of yourself and be mindful of your body and how stress is affecting us. And it affects us all differently. Maybe they have headaches, maybe they have stomach aches, maybe they have acne. Maybe there are different issues happening in their life that they didn't even know that was affecting them. And if we carry stress with us, it can have so many long-term effects. So I really want them to be aware of some of those stresses. And then I ask them, right, have they ever felt any of those things? Can they remember the situation? And one, I think it helps to normalize some of those feelings and responses. I think people could be really nervous about sharing, so it's really good to develop those group norms up front so they know it's a safe space. And then also, just kind of starting to be aware of the stress. The next thing that we do is just a fun little activity. You just need a deck of cards, and then there are just 4 questions that I ask students. If I do an odd card, they have to name something that stresses them out. If it's an even card, they have to name one way stress affects them physically, emotionally, behaviorally, or cognitively. And again, just pushing one more way, because that post-test that I have everyone do, a pre-post test, is being able to name some ways that stress affects us. So they would need to do that at the beginning or at the end, whatever works best for you. If they draw a face card, you have to name someone who you feel like you can talk to about your stress. And I think this is really important because we all need that person. And it could be a friend, it could be a teacher or a coach. It doesn't matter, but it could be a therapist, right? It could be your school counselor, but not everyone does that. And so I want to make sure that people are thinking about that safe person who they can kind of talk to and vent about their stress. And then if they draw an ACE card, I want them to name a place that they can go when they feel stressed out. I think, again, it's really important for us to recognize that there are safe spaces, if it's just closing the door to your room, if it's going outside, whatever it is, I want them to know that there are safe places. And if you feel like the group is having a tough time thinking about people or places, take a second and stop and do a brainstorm right there with the group on what some of those places can look like, because it may be that they never thought about it, right? So all you need is a deck of cards. You can do it in person. You can do it virtually. It's really great. I've even found online some virtual cards that you can do like a random picking a card. So even if you don't have a deck of cards, there's a way around it. So the next part of the group lesson is really the discussion questions, which I have for you as well. And it should take about 15 to 20 minutes. And they are questions geared towards the stress in our life for students to ask. Not every student has to answer. If you feel like the group may need a little probing, you can start to call on students. But they're really just breaking out, thinking about stress in their life. And one of the really important questions that I think for school counselors is a question about, do you feel safe at home? And I think it's really important for us to ask that, because that's one way that school counselors can have an alarm kind of going off of if this is not a safe place for our students at home. So I'm glad that question is incorporated in there. I think you could also, if you needed to, make this into a survey as well and have students answer it on their own. So if you weren't in person, or maybe you have students who have trouble with writing or reading, you could do it with a partner. I think there's lots of different ways that you could change up this discussion to work for your students. And then we just do a short kind of recap of some of the things that we've learned today. And I kind of give them for next time a couple of questions, which is, how do you currently manage your stress? Is it working? If you are effectively managing your stress, what does it look like, right? Kind of that miracle question of, in that perfect world, if I was healthy and thriving, even knowing that we still have stress, everybody does, what does it look like? So I have a couple of other additional questions that I wanted to let you know about, which I've kind of already talked about a little bit. And is this lesson developmentally appropriate? And I think so. I really do. I think that all kids like to be engaged. I think the use of technology with the survey and the YouTube videos is good. I think the game is a little bit more fun. The language that is used or I use is very grade appropriate. So I think it is developmentally appropriate. Is it culturally sensitive? We all know that stress comes for us all, right? It comes for young people, old people. It doesn't matter about gender or race. And I think talking about that, which I do in the presentation, and letting them know and normalize that everybody's stressed. And then I am aware that you, people of color, are more stressed. Where I live and work, it is predominantly people of color. My school is 89% Hispanic and 8% Native American. So the majority of people are color, and I want them to be aware that you are not the only one. I see you, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to include those slides for them during their lesson. And I really think this lesson can be used to kind of close the achievement gap, because if you are not aware of the stress in your life, it can have long-term effects. It could be maybe a reason why a student drops out. It could be why a student doesn't, thrive as they move forward in their life. So really being aware of stress is super important. And I think that stress survey is just good for data purposes in general. It can assess some of the outcomes. It can assess where our students are at in particular. So I'm really happy that is included. And I mentioned this a little bit about differentiated instruction, and I think there's a lot of ways that you can change this to work for your students. I mean, this is all virtual and online with the PowerPoint that I have, but you could easily do it while you are in person. You can easily, like I said, have a partner help out with students. You could just find it a little bit easier for people to do. So I think it's definitely accessible to everybody. And then some classroom management techniques that I think are really important to utilize, which I'm sure you guys are already doing, is again modeling ideal classroom behavior. I think, you know, the way that you present yourself is really important, and then people are going to take stock of that. Let the students help establish the guidelines and the flow. Really let them be a part of it from the very beginning. I'm really all about praise and positive affirmation, especially with something like this. I know it can be a little hard to get the group going, and the more praise that you can do, people are gonna want to be involved. And then the use of technology, I think, is really engaging, and there's so many different things that we can do, but I think it just lends itself to be a little bit more accessible for high school students. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please let me know. I have all the handouts, the informed consent, the images that we use, the discussion questions, a survey, all of that is available to you, as well as the PowerPoint. So if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks. Bye.